Hi, thanks for joining us for the Family Plot, Gardening in the Mid-South. I'm Chris Cooper. Rabbits can wreak havoc on a vegetable garden. Today we're going to talk about how to control them. Also, we're getting a tour of a beehive. That's just ahead of the Family Plot, Gardening in the Mid-South.
Production funding for the Family Plot, Gardening in the Mid-South is provided by the WKNO Production Fund, the WKNO Endowment Fund, and by viewers like you. Thank you.
Welcome to the Family Plot. I'm Chris Cooper. Joining me today is Mr. D. Mr. D is a retired UT Extension agent, and David Glover will be joining me later. Oh, it's good to see you, Mr. D.
Good to see you.
Yeah, so you ready to talk about rabbits? I think you know a little something about
I do.
Trying to control those rabbits, right?
I do. And you know, I can't go without saying the best way to control one is a 12-year-old with a 20 gauge shotgun. And I got to mention
he's
that.
Back.
Yeah, 12-year-old with a 20 gauge, 22 rifle or something like that. But with all that being said, right. They are an interesting critter. They reproduce very quickly, and they are a very important food source, not only for, folks like me,
right.
but coyotes and feral cats and birds of prey, hawks, owls, and everything. They're almost as good as chicken. Everything. They're very, very tasty, and a lot of animals depend upon rabbits in the ecosystem. And unfortunately, if you have a garden, many of those predators aren't able to, get out in your yard and control those rabbits, and they can be a problem in a garden. But the biology of rabbits are a little different. They are, and I picked this up in graduate school in biology class, crepuscular in nature.
Okay.
Crepuscular, that means...
You used to remember that from graduate school.
I remember that. That's one of the few words I remember from graduate school. But it means that the animals are active in twilight.
Okay.
So they're not active in the middle of the day, very active in the middle of the day or the middle of the night, but early in the morning, very early in the morning, and very late in the evening, they're very active. And a lot of deer hunters see rabbits, and they're familiar with a little bit about rabbit behavior.
Right. Gotcha.
But the female rabbit is called a doe, and the male is called a buck. The young one is called a kit. On the average, rabbits live for 12 to 15 months. They can produce as many as 6 litters per year. They produce more litters in the north than, no, I got that backwards. They produce larger litters in the north,
gotcha.
but fewer litters in the north because they don't start breeding until, around frost. Well, they'll breed before the average frost-free date, but they probably don't deliver until after the last frost-free date. But they can produce as many as 6 litters per year down south, down in Texas and the southern part of the United States, and probably 3 litters per year up north. And then the southern litters are smaller, only 2 or 3 rabbits per litter. And in the northern litters, they are larger. They have up to 6. And I don't know whether, I guess that's just a warmth thing.
Yeah,
maybe to keep the little fellas warm.
Yeah, how about that?
But the gestation period of a rabbit is about 4 weeks, 28 to 30 days. The mama rabbit, the doe, can rebreed within hours after delivering a litter.
Right.
And
it's amazing to me.
It is, and they can reproduce very quickly. Baby rabbits, when you'll see them out in your yard, if you've got a lot of rabbits, their eyes open in only 7 to 8 days. So they won't be out. If you find a nest of them, I call it a nest. It's they don't deliver in a hole in the ground. They just have kind of an area that's protected with vegetation over the top of it, and it's kind of a depressed area in the ground where they will deliver their litter. But they will stay there, and their eyes will be closed for 7 or 8 days. Of course, it is a mammal, so she nurses the young.
Right.
But they leave the nest in 2 to 3 weeks, and a week later, Mama delivers another litter
Another
of
litter.
rabbits.
How about
So
that?
that's the way they go. Under ideal conditions, a pair of rabbits could produce 18 young per year. But again,
Right.
most of those probably are
Right.
taken by predation or don't survive due to weather or things like that. A lot of them don't make it.
So-
But unless it's in your yard
Unless it's in
or
your
your
yard.
garden, and then they all survive and they will.
Well, let's talk about how to control them if they're in our yard or in our garden.
The best way is, other than the 12-year-old
Yeah,
20
other
gauge
than that,
shotgun, is,
right.
in my opinion, it's an electric fence. Now
Okay.
you can use other types of fences. You can use chain link fences, but a small rabbit can get through a chain link fence.
Oh, wow.
So
Okay.
you can use hardware cloth. But with small enough mesh to keep the small rabbits from getting through it. You can do all that, but in my opinion, the quickest and probably the cheapest way to control them is using an electric fence. And you can reuse that. You can build that and reuse it, take it down and put it back up. And I've personally had good luck keeping rabbits out of our research plots here at Agri Center International by using an electric fence and having the wire at about 4 inches off the ground.
Wow, that's pretty
And it needs to be hot. You need to make sure that you're not having anything that grounds out the wire. So if you have weeds or
you gotta
anything
keep
that
them
grows
down.
up, you need to make sure you weed eat under that or control that with herbicide.
Okay.
Under the electric fence.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But
Can they dig under the fence? Or can they jump over it?
they could do either, but
do either?
they don't, where I'm concerned, because I think when they get close to it and they put that little
Yeah.
pink, tender nose up against that
Right.
wire, I think it changes their mind.
Yeah.
And if the fence is not working, all bets are off.
Oh, right.
If
So-
the power goes off,
Yeah. That's a good point. Yeah, that's a good point.
and if
Which
if
happens.
the charger goes out on you, then all bets are off. Then they're out there and they have a good meal. It doesn't take them long to clean up what you got.
Right. So what do they like to eat?
They like tender, succulent vegetation. That's the grasses, herbs, anything herbs. Now there are a few vegetables that they don't normally eat, and it's tomatoes, squash, peppers. There's a couple more here. Those are the main ones that I haven't seen them eating.
Okay.
Tomato, squash, and peppers. There may be a couple more. But they love the legumes, the peas, and the beans, and they don't eat corn.
Corn, yeah.
For some reason, corn's one that they don't seem to bother. But in flowers, your ornamentals and things like that, they like that too. They love clover, and they like any of the weeds in my yard. They think the grasses and mostly weeds.
Weeds, right.
They
So they eat some
like
of that.
most of that. But as long as it's green and it's succulent, and they're happy with that.
Okay.
Lettuce.
Of course. Yeah, they eat lettuce.
Carrots.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Of course.
Silly
right.
wabbit.
Right. Bugs Bunny. Right.
Yeah.
Right. So in order to control them again, so electric fence is
That's,
probably
in
what
my
you would
opinion,
do,
that's the
in your
best,
opinion.
and that's what I've had success with.
That's what you had success with.
I have not had luck trapping them. I've tried trapping them, and when I was a freshman in high school, one of my low ag projects was to build a rabbit trap, and I built a rabbit trap, and I set that thing, and I checked it every day, and I caught possums. And I caught possums.
Okay.
But I never caught a rabbit. And it was my rabbit box. And I've had live traps since then out in my lawn, and I've never caught a rabbit. I never caught a rabbit in a live trap.
Caught a possum,
Yeah.
but not a rabbit.
I caught possums. I caught raccoons. I've caught squirrels. I've caught chipmunks. I've caught a lot of things, but. Not a rabbit.
Not a rabbit. So electric fence will do the trick for you. Thank you, Mr. D. We appreciate that. From experience, we appreciate that.
Happy hunting.
Happy hunting. All right.
My wife hates poison ivy. This is not poison ivy. It took me a while to train her on how to tell the difference. It's really very easy. If you notice the leaves, it has 5 leaflets. Poison ivy has 3. We only have 5 leaflets here. This is Virginia creeper, and it is easily confused with poison ivy because of the growth habit and the color. And sometimes poison ivy is mixed in with Virginia creeper. So be careful when you're dealing with it. I do not see 3 leaves in here anywhere. You can see the fruit on here, the little berries. Virginia creeper, poison ivy has berries on it too. So it has some similarities. Poison ivy has hairy outgrowths from the stem, and Virginia creeper does not. Pretty easy to control. It may take more than one application of a herbicide. Glyphosate is a good product. If it's running up a tree or your house, you can cut it loose, and then when it regrows, as it's actively growing, spray it with the glyphosate. And glyphosate works better on actively growing, fast-growing tissue. Spray it on the green tissue, and you ought to be able to take it out.
All right, Mr. David.
Hey,
We
we're
have
back.
the get-ups on, huh?
This is a little
The
different.
bee suits.
Bee suits.
Right.
We're actually in bees. Couple of things real quickly
Okay.
before we even start. One thing that is really hard for new beekeepers is keeping their smoker lit.
Okay.
Now, why do you use smoker? To alert the bees. Now,
Alert, not
well,
alarm, alert.
kind
I
of.
got
You may want to
Okay.
think about it. Most people think smoke is calming effect on
Okay.
bees. It doesn't. It actually confuses their ability to talk to each other. All the kids know about the waggle dance and how bees tell other bees about where flowers are, but bees really communicate with pheromones. Those are smells that mean something. Well, we generally can't smell what the bees are saying, so what we can smell is smoke.
Okay.
Smoke is louder than anything the bees can say. And the first thing that we do when we get into the bees is we smoke them a little bit. That smoke confuses their ability to talk to each other. The guard bees can't tell the other bees that we're in them. And some of the bees will actually take that smoke and realize there's a fire somewhere.
Okay.
And they'll go into the hive and suck up as much honey as they can. It distends their abdomens. And bees have to extend their stinger to sting. And when their bellies are full, they can't push
can't
out
do
their
it.
stinger.
Okay.
So they're confused and they can't sting us. The smoker is very important, and keeping it lit while you're working is even more important, because once the bees are looking at us, that means they know we're here.
Okay.
There's a little bit of smoke across the top of them, and they go back to doing what they were doing.
Well, let's make sure we keep that smoker on, man.
So we smoked
Let's
them in
do
the front.
that.
We've waited about 60 seconds. We're going to lift the back,
All right.
put a little smoke under here.
Okay.
And the reason we're opening this hive is because I just got these bees from somebody's house last week.
Okay.
And we want to see how they're progressing. One thing that we look at as the bees come and go from the entrance, you can learn a lot about what's going on with the bees. If they have pollen on their legs, that means they have babies. If they have babies, that means they probably have a laying queen.
Okay.
Pollen is protein. Everything needs protein to grow.
Okay.
Okay? So we watch that. We watch the activity. Is there any arguing going on in front? Is anybody fighting? Bees defend their hive.
Okay.
If there's no hive movement up front, no arguing, then they're not stressed. Well, there's some bees.
Wow, how about that?
And this is a hive tool. Neat factors on this is you can use this to break apart pieces of wood that the bees have glued together.
Okay.
Hear that popping?
Yeah, I heard it.
Okay.
Now, how would you think the bees are doing?
Right now we've got bees, so they're alive.
So they're alive. Okay.
You see how they're looking up at us? See the
I
eyes?
see that.
Just a little bit of smoke. And down they go.
Wow, they went straight down.
Okay.
Okay.
When we open a hive, we
Yeah.
start on the outside and work in.
Okay.
Now this is a new hive. I'm not expecting much movement in here, but this is what we would do. Pry the bar apart. This goes right here and jacks up the side of the frame. Not expecting anything on this frame because it's brand new.
Okay.
Slide this frame over and keep sliding over to see what the bees are doing.
So as you're sliding those over, though, but that's not bothering the bees.
No, because they're doing their thing.
Okay.
Okay.
Wow.
Lift this up. See the
Okay.
glistening in there?
That's it.
That's nectar.
Neat.
That's going to be honey.
Neat.
Nectar comes from flowers. It's the liquid source in the flower that draws the bees in.
Okay.
As the bees are digging around getting nectar, the pollen in the flower is actually getting stuck to the little hairs on their bodies. And when they leave that flower and go to the next flower, that causes pollination. The pollen transfers. That causes our fruits and our vegetables to grow. Now, see this real fat bee right here?
I see it.
That's a drone. That's a
Okay.
boy.
Okay.
Okay?
Pretty good
If
size,
you look
too.
at him,
Man.
see how big his eyes are?
I see that.
His whole head is just about all eyes. He's got one purpose in life, and that's to find a new queen and mate with her. So he needs all those eyes to see her.
How about that?
He sits in the hive all day long until about 2 o'clock in the afternoon, sucking up honey. Around 2 o'clock in the afternoon, all the drones leave the hive, and they go to a place called a drone congregation area, a DCA.
DCA.
It's sort of like a smoker lounge for bees, and they kind of hang out and wait for a new queen to come. Now, how does she find them? There's not a big neon sign up there, but there's pheromones, a trail of pheromones where the boys have flown, and she follows straight to them. And when she shows up, game is on.
Wow.
They will chase her. And the
That's
first
interesting,
12 to 20 drones that catch up with her will mate with her. And she stores up all of that genetic material inside her body in a very special organ called a spermatotheca. And coming from her intestines is a tube that feeds sugar to them.
Okay.
And it keeps those sperm viable for up to 5 years.
Whoa.
Crazy?
Man, that is wild.
One mating, and that's it for her.
Wow. That's it.
That's
Yeah.
it for, we're gonna go one more box down. That's it for her. She never leaves the hive again unless the hive feels constricted or congested. And she will leave with half the colony and go find a new home.
Okay.
That's what happens in the spring and summer. It's called swarming.
Okay.
They're looking for a new home. So it'll be a big cluster of bees hanging on a tree or a mailbox or somebody's car. They don't have anything to defend, so they're not gonna sting you unless you go mess with them. In fact, even here, bees are defensive. They're only going to defend their hive and their honey. They're not going to come look at you like wasps or yellow jackets will.
Yes.
Okay?
I've been a witness to that one.
We're going to go down one more box. This box is the box of frames and comb that we got from the house. A lot more action in here. When we take comb out of a house, we got to do something with it. Rubber bands hold it in place. So everyone that has the X on it is a rubber banded comb.
Okay.
These on the outside are just fillers that we put in so that they have everything they need to grow.
Ah.
Plastic foundation. Bees build wax on top of this. They build it out.
How neat is that?
They'll do it on both
Man.
sides. We'll set that right here. Go over one more. And now that looks good.
That's a lot of bees down in there.
That's also a lot of honey.
Ah,
See the white caps?
I do.
That white is honey.
Okay.
Earlier we had liquid. Once it gets to about 17% moisture, once the bees have dried it out, they cap it over with wax. And that's their honey. And again,
It's impressive.
2 fat
I
drones.
see them.
A lot of workers. In a hive of 40,000 bees, you may have 1,000 boys.
1,000. How long before the bees can make honey, though?
Well, almost immediately.
Okay.
When they set up a new hive, there are bees that are building wax and bees that are going to the field. And they're bringing food in as fast as they can. So this is comb that was in somebody's house.
Wow.
See the tan pockets?
Uh-huh.
Those are babies. Those are brood
Okay.
that are just about to hatch. They go through the same 4 metamorphic stages that butterflies go through: egg, larva, pupa, adult.
Right.
They actually spin a cocoon inside the wax, and that's the cap over the cocoon.
Wow.
But this was in somebody's house last week.
How about
And they'll
that?
eventually fill this whole area out with wax, and once they do, then we won't have to worry about these spare pieces sticking off the side. I'll set that there.
That is so impressive. Now, David, before we have to leave,
Mhm.
I noticed there are a few dead bees lying on the ground.
Yes. New beekeepers may look at that and go, oh my gosh, somebody sprayed my bees, or they've gotten into a pesticide. Bees work themselves to death.
Okay.
And sometimes they'll die inside the hive, and when they do, another bee will carry that dead bee outside the hive and drop it on the ground. Well, the entrance is right here, so there are a few dead bees on the ground.
Okay.
What I'm looking for right now is evidence that the queen is laying. We're looking for eggs and larvae. Right here is the queen.
Ah,
Right here, going down.
going down, I see her.
It doesn't take long for her to lay an egg. The queen lays about 1,500 to 2,000 eggs a day. Literally, her body weight every day in eggs.
How impressive is that? Mr. David, we appreciate this. This has been outstanding. In fact, it's been
Outstanding in the field.
unbelievable. How about that? Thank you
Yes.
much.
You're very welcome. Thank y'all.
Here in Memphis last year, we had a real hard winter. A lot of the plant material in our landscape did not survive that winter. We have a rose bush here, and as you can tell, it actually got killed back by the winter. Not only do we have to freeze in the winter, we had to freeze a couple of months back as well. So what we're gonna do here is we're gonna actually prune out a lot of the dead wood that you see here. So we're approaching summer. We wanted to let it grow just to see if it would come back, but as you can tell, most of it did not. So let's give it a hand and see if we can start pruning out again a lot of the dead wood. Let the rose breathe a little bit, and we'll see what happens later this summer, okay? Yeah, and I'm just going to be cutting where I see a lot of dead wood. Down on this cane, there's actually some new growth. So I'm just going to cut back till I get to green tissue. Let's see. I can tell I'm getting close. Let's see if I can do one more cut here. Yeah. So I'm actually starting to see a little green tissue there. Right. And again, if you look at this cane, there's your growth. So this growth is actually coming back from this cane. So we'll leave it. And now we'll see what happens to the rest of the rose bush as we move into summer. All right, Mr. D, here's our Q&A segment. You ready?
Now let's do it.
Hey, let's do it, he says. All right, here's our first viewer email. Can a muscadine vine be transplanted by breaking off a twig and planting it somewhere different? How long would it take to produce? And this is Craig from Middleton, Tennessee. Oh, he's pulling out the publication.
Yeah. NC State. North Carolina State. Yeah,
That's right.
this is
Extension.
Look at there.
Right?
What about that?
It's pretty
That's a good-looking muscadine.
Oh, that looks good.
I guess to answer Craig's question is simply no.
Okay.
You can't just break off a
Simply
twig
no.
and plant it
Right.
somewhere different.
Right.
Now, the best way and the way that most muscadines are propagated are with softwood cuttings. And you can take the softwood cuttings and you take a long whip off of a muscadine vine and you cut the tip off of it and you cut it into shorter segments that have 3 or 4 nodes in it, and you stick them in potting soil and you keep it moist.
Yep.
You leave a leaf on each one of them and all that. It's very, very, if you're going to do that, do a lot of them.
Okay.
Because your survival rate may not be that good. Some of them will survive, but probably not 90% of them.
Right.
Maybe more like 25% or something like that. It's been my experience.
Okay. All right.
But now, if you don't want to, you've got to keep it moist. They don't like wet feet. They don't like standing water. So if it's too wet, they will die. If it dries out, they will die. I had a guy that there was the guy down in Alabama that made him a system that would mist his muscadine plants, and it was based on a commode flusher that had some kind of screen on it, and he would spray water on that commode flusher and it'd cut the water off. And then when it dried, it would come back up.
Right.
And the water would come back on again. You could probably do the same thing with a timer or something like that. But a simple way to do it, a really simple way to do it is to layer You can take one of the
Okay,
vines
right.
down and you can
Yeah.
dig a little hole and put it down kind of in
Yeah,
that hole,
cover
put
it
the
back
dirt on
up,
top of
yeah.
it, put a brick on top of
Right,
it.
I've heard that.
And do that, and then, you know, let it grow throughout the summer, and in the wintertime, you cut it loose from the mother plant and you transplant it.
Right.
That's a simple way to do it. You can use a bottle, you can air layer.
I've seen that too as well.
Take a drink
That's
bottle,
right.
cut the bottom of it off, you know, run one of the vines down, or the runners or limbs, I can't think of what I'm saying, but and fill it with fill the cup or the bottle that you cut the bottom out of with potting soil, and you know, you just kind of secure that to the plant and leave it alone for the growing season, and roots will start to appear in that bottle, and then you cut it loose from the mother plant and plant it. You know, that's a simpler way to do it. But no, you can't just
No,
take
right.
you can't just take one, stick it in the ground and grow. Some plants you can do that with.
Yeah, but not
muscadines.
No, that is good. That is good. Dr. Lockwood would be proud of you.
Lockwood.
I've been to a couple of his trainings, and
Yep.
you sounded just like him.
Yep.
Yeah, so he would definitely be proud. All right, so there you have it, Craig. There you have it. The answer is no. All right. All right, Mr. D, that was fun. That was fun. Thank you
Good
much.
job.
Good. Remember, we love to hear from you. Send us an email or letter. The email address is familyplot@wkno.org, and the mailing address is Family Plot, 7151 Cherry Farms Road, Cordova, Tennessee 38016. Or you can go online to familyplotgarden.com. That's all we have time for today. Thanks for watching. Today we talked about rabbits and bees, but at familyplotgarden.com we have information about hundreds of different gardening topics. It's there to help you grow the best garden ever. Be sure to join us next week for the Family Plot, Gardening in the Mid-South. Be safe.